Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to continue on yet again with this Swedish series of beer reviews, and this is another new brewery, a very first taste of one of their beers. So for this one we are going to go to a place called Västerås, which is to the west of Stockholm, about 100 kilometres to the west, and we're going to visit Coppersmiths Brewery. And this is quite an interesting style of beer. I've only reviewed a couple of these. It's the White IPA. To give the beer its full title, Coppersmiths White IPA. And usually with these beers you have the typical IPA hop characteristics, but you've got a nice kind of wheaty malt base. And the last beer I can really remember that I reviewed in this category was from the Netherlands. It was the White Whale, which was Orsop and Ruidop, and that was a really quite nice beer, and it's a style that I find is really nice, but you don't find so many of them. So this should be a really interesting beer review, especially when you consider the fact that yesterday we were reviewing the Black IPA from Beer Bluetooth. It gives you a good contrast of the two different styles, if you like. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you do want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual website links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my future reviews that I'll do from Coppersmiths. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I said, and there's all the usual social media things down there, Facebook, Twitter and Untappd, all for the channel. Please support me through there. Your support would be much appreciated. And to my Swedish viewers, I do apologise if any of the pronunciations aren't quite right. I'm still learning Swedish since I moved here to Lund, but please do forgive me and let me know some of your own the Swedish beers that you'd like me to have a look at. Always interesting to try new beers, and some of the Swedish stuff I've tried so far has been pretty top notch, so I will try and review the beers that you suggest. So anyway, this brewery, Coppersmiths Brewery, was founded in 2013 by Goran Karlsson and Petri Karukorpi, and they're based in Västerås on the shores of Lake Mälaren in Västmanland, which is about 100 kilometres or so to the west of Stockholm. You've got a big lake there, and just across the water actually is Eskilstuna, and I reviewed a beer from Eskilstuna Ölkultur as part of this Swedish series for you as well, so do go and check that out too. Very nice brewery. But the idea of a brewery first appeared between Goran and Petri in 2011, and in 2012 they actually spent a lot of time visiting various beer festivals, conferences, and they also visited a manufacturing plant in Italy before they finally completed their business plan in 2013. So their equipment from Italy arrived in early 2014, and they also invested quite heavily in their lab equipment as well to kind of monitor the microorganisms and how their yeast and things were doing during the brewing process. But they began their production properly in April of 2014. So the brewery are based in the Hackstad industrial estate in the city, and it actually has a floor space of about 600 square metres, and at present they have an annual brewing capacity of around 200,000 litres of beer, but they say that they've got enough floor space to expand this to 1 million litres of beer per year. And their brew kit, like I told you, is from Italy, their pressure tanks are from the Netherlands, and they also have a canning line from Canada, and I believe that they were actually the first brewery in Sweden to actually have a canning line, so quite a little interesting trait there. But I've not seen any canned beers from them yet, so maybe that's something that they're still trying to get up and running. But that's your very brief history of the Coppersmiths Brewery. If you want to learn a little bit more about them, go and check it out. But just to list the other beers you can get from these guys, they're quite interesting, and they seem to be named after all the chess pieces. So you have the Queen's Pale Ale, the Knight's IPA, the Rook's Red Lager, the Pond's Pils, the Bishop's Rye Ale, the King's Checkmate Stout, Fusion Saison Rhubarb and Raspberry, and you also have this guy here, the Coppersmiths White IPA. And to tell you the stats about this beer before we taste it, this one is a 7% White IPA. It's hopped with Amarillo, Columbus and Mosaic, and it's got a malt base of pale and wheat malts, and the beer was introduced in 2014, and it uses a Belle Saison yeast strain, so should be a very interesting one for us to try. And as I say, the White IPA is a kind of unusual style. It comes in at 7%, and it should be really nice. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up, so you can see this really nice kind of modern artwork on this one here, and you can see the nice, I think it's meant to be a crown actually, but it looks really quite cool. I actually quite like the symbol for this one, for the brewery, the Coppersmiths Brewery, and you can see this is on the bottle cap as well, but maybe you can see it a little bit on the side there. It has a few things in Swedish. It says this is a new and innovative brewery in Västerås with passion, quality and taste smack in our thoughts. This White IPA is made with our personal taste, if you like, and it's brewed with 50% wheat and 50% corn malt with Columbus, Mosaic and Amarillo. My Swedish isn't quite good yet, otherwise I would translate it literally, but you get the idea. I told you the stats of this beer, so without further ado we'll get stuck into this one. You can see there as well it says Swedish craft beer, so yeah, should be a pretty cool one for us to review. So let's get it open then. One thing actually I'd like to ask for the videos, if any of you do have any other white IPAs that you can recommend to me, do give me a shout with that, because I would be interested to review more of this style, because the ones I've reviewed I have enjoyed, and as I say, it's a style that's a little bit unusual to come across. Just try and pour this one carefully so we don't get too much head on it. You always want a head on your beer, but you don't want it to go too crazy. And this one is just pouring quite nicely actually. Yes. So there we are. Sometimes you just have to watch with these beers because they go a bit mental, and there was a bit of sediment visible in the bottom of this one. But with this one you can really smell the nice kind of almost sweet wheat character actually, and that's without even paying too much attention to the aroma. So as you can see, this beer is poured your typical wheat beer colour. It's a nice bright yellowy golden one. It is opaque. You can see if I put my fingers behind it, there is a little bit of transparency to it just because of the fact that it's yellow. You can put the light through that kind of wavelength quite easily. There's a 2-finger kind of bumpy white head on this one. It's not very frothy, more of a bumpy white head. There's a little bit of sediment visible on the bottom there, some big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and quite a few little bubbles just going up towards the bottom of the head, but it looks like a very, very nice beer. So we'll have a look at the aroma here before we try it. And I have to admit, I do like the white IPA aromas. Reminds me a little bit of the Belgian wheat beers. I'd be interested to know if that saison yeast actually comes from Belgium. But yeah, really nice. As you expect, you get some of this nice big bready, almost Belgian style yeast coming out of this one. But you've got a lot of hoppy character in there as well. So there's a bit of an orangey citrus, which is from the Amarillo hop. A bit of tropical fruit as well, kind of a grapefruity note, and you get that from the Mosaic. And there's a lot of, with all of the 3 of the hops that are in this beer, you get a sort of floral aromatic character, but that's actually quite mild. It comes across as being almost a bit more of a grassiness. It's the aroma is quite fruity and quite juicy, and that's the orange and the Amarillo. So the orange in the Amarillo, and the kind of tropical grapefruit coming out in this one. But like I say, there's a big floral aromatic character, and when you sugar the beer up, you can get a bit more of that. It becomes a little bit more spicy. And there's also a kind of a little bit of earthiness too, and that's a characteristic of the Mosaic hop. I really like the Mosaic hop. Usually a kind of sort of tropical grapefruit note that you'll get from that, but you do get this kind of unusual earthy flavour from it as well. It's a really interesting blend. The Mosaic hop is a really interesting one for brown ales and stuff like that, because it gives you a mix between that earthy and fruity character. Snuffing a little bit of the head there, that was an accident. But yeah, as you would expect from this style of beer, like I said, there's a big kind of sweet, wheaty and bready character from this one. It's quite yeasty as well, and you can just smell that underneath the beer. But overall, the main components of the aroma here are the nice juicy fruits, the orange from the Amarillo and the grapefruit from the Mosaic. A little bit of the sort of grassy and aromatic characters of the beer. But yeah, it's a big kind of wheaty. There's a big nice light wheaty and sweet bready character to this one. So as I always say before you try these beers, give them a good smell and try and pick up a few different things, because they always give you an idea of what's actually going to come up in the flavour. So without further ado then, let's get stuck into this beer. So this is the Coppersmiths White IPA from the Coppersmiths Brewery in Västerås, which is just about 100 kilometres or so to the west of Stockholm in Sweden. So go and check it out, meant to be quite a nice place, and we'll get stuck into this beer. Skål! I'll tell you something, it's awesome, really nice, but it's a lot hoppier than you would expect from the aroma. Not that that's a bad thing, but I was just quite surprised with how hoppy this beer was on the first taste. As I always say with these kind of beers, do just sugar them around your mouth a little bit before you actually think too much about the different components of the flavour. But yeah, this is quite interesting. So, from the fruity character of the beer, you're getting what you would expect from the hops. There's a nice orangey citrus character. As I say, that comes from the Amarillo, but there's a good bit of tropical fruit in there as well, and it's There's a bit of juicy character from the citrus, but it comes across as that very, that almost kind of generic but quite sharp citrus. You get a good mix just behind the very front of your palate. You'll feel an oily bubble there. That's where you get a lot of these fruity esters coming out, and you just feel that there's a big mix between that tropical grapefruit and the citrus, and it just gives you that really strong and quite potent fruity character from this beer. And that actually, so far, it's lingering into the aftertaste, but the beer, as you progress through the beer, your flavour will change a little bit, as I always say. Yeah. So as you would expect with a white IPA, the middle of your palate is just blanketed with that nice malt base, and it's actually a kind of, it's like a big dusty and doughy bread. It just blankets the middle of your tongue there. And the pale malts are quite interesting because it gives you a very light base, but then on top of that you've got these heavier, wheaty and more bready characteristics, and on top of that you've got these fruity characters, and around the edge of the palate is where you're starting to get the hops as well. There's a lot going on in this beer, so there's a lot to pay attention to in the flavour. But yeah, the malt base in this one, there's a very light, pale bready character, and on top of that you've got these bigger, slightly more doughy, bready notes there, and there's a bit of a wheaty spice lingering there as you move into the aftertaste, and the kind of slightly sour character from the grapefruit and the strong character of the citrus, that's lingering there into the aftertaste. The hoppy character is there, but it's not quite as prominent as the other components of the beer. Yeah, the hoppy components of this beer, normally you would expect a little bit of earthy character from the Amarillo, and there is just a touch of it at the back corners of the palate, but it's really mild in comparison to the other flavours in this beer. As you move further forward, at the sides of the tongue you've got a fairly smooth aromatic character, but as you start to move around the front of the palate and around that front curve of your tongue, there's quite a dry and almost slightly spicy aromatic floral character coming out of this one. It's quite nice, and it gives you a good mouthfeel if you think about the strength of the fruit characters, the tropical fruit and the orange flavours in this one. You've got a very kind of streamlined mouthfeel to this one, I think, or a very streamlined flavour. And as you warm this beer up a little bit, you will start to get a bit more of that kind of the smoother and slightly sweeter characters of the wheaty malt coming out in this one. I can detect it a little bit already, and it's only been out the bottle for a couple of minutes. Yeah, malt base in this one, it really does smooth out just as you progress through the beer, and it's probably something as well to do with the fact that your palate is adjusting to the beer all the time. But this is really nice. I mean, as I always say with the white IPAs, it's a style that's really interesting because it's almost like a hybrid between a sort of Belgian white beer, a Belgian wheat beer, or a wit beer, however you want to look at it, one of the two, and then the American style IPA. But it works best if you use these more floral and aromatic hops with just a little bit of fruit. There are ones that are very, very fruity, but using the things like the Columbus and the Mosaic, they work really well with this style of beer for me. So they've picked their hops quite well, I think. But yeah, this is really nice. I'm not sure how easy it will be to find this beer outside of Sweden because they are a very new brewery, so it'll probably take them a couple of years to start exporting their beer, unfortunately, but you know, give them a few years and I think these guys will be up there. I need to try some of their other beers. I'd love to try one of their dark ones actually, the stout maybe, and see how we get on with that. But yeah, in terms of a white IPA, it has everything you expect. You've got that nice kind of wheaty, bready malt base in there. There's a good fruity character. It's quite interesting in this one. And then you've got a nice kind of floral aromatic hop there. So what I would say is, in terms of the flavour, if you like your Belgian wit beers but you like them a bit hoppier, then this is the beer for you to try. If you like your IPAs and you like them to be big and sort of floral aromatic, then this is one for you to try as well. And it's in that regard, this is something a little bit different because obviously it's a white IPA, so it's got a more wheaty malt base rather than the kind of typical caramel or biscuity malt base that you get from a regular American style IPA. But very, very nice beer, a more unusual style, so something to try if, like me, you like trying beers that are a little bit less common. So in terms of the mouthfeel of this one, I would say this one's probably mid-bodied. For me, I always find, and it's just my personal taste there, you might think differently, but I always find the wheat beers can be kind of heavy a little bit. So for me, this is a mid-bodied beer. Carbonation in this one, I would say, quite active actually. It comes across as quite a crisp mouthfeel to this one, but you've got a nice hoppy bitterness in this beer, and that goes all the way around the tongue. It's a big florally aromatic character to this one. Another style that it reminds me of a little bit is the English IPA with the big floral aromatic-y characters rather than the fruitiness. It reminds me of that a little bit as well. But yeah, big floral aromatic hoppy character. It's quite dry around the edges of the tongue, and there is a bit of dryness to the malt base as well. The wheaty spice gives you a little bit of dryness there, so it's quite a kind of dry and bitter beer, this one, in a few different regards. But overall, it's very, very nice. But for me, the wheat beers are more of a taster. I like having one of these every so often, but I wouldn't necessarily go and session one of these, you know. And for me, an IPA is a little bit more sessionable, but that's just my taste. I always find the wheat malt base is just a little bit heavier, and if I'm going to session, I prefer something a little bit lighter. But since I do the beer reviews, I actually don't drink beer out with the reviews that much anyway. When I go out, I like trying different things like rums and all of that. So yeah, but overall, this is a really, really nice beer. I would recommend that you go and check out Coppersmiths Brewery on the basis of this beer. I would like to return to them in the future, and I think I'll try and make my next review one of their dark beers or something quite different from this, just to see. Gives you a good scope of the brewery if you try a light beer and then a dark beer. But if you enjoy, as I say, sort of floral aromatic IPAs, or you enjoy Belgian wit beers, then this is an interesting sort of hybrid of the style. It's a more unusual style, but definitely worth checking out. So go and check out these guys. So as always with my reviews then, please do let me know in the comment section below your own thoughts on this beer. Always interesting to hear from you guys. Please go like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Go and check out the social media links in the description below. Read a bit more about the brewery, and most importantly, go and check their beers and support your local microbreweries. I thank you for watching my beer reviews. There will be more from this Swedish series fairly soon. I've got two. I've got a Norwegian beer and an Icelandic beer in the next two videos, but then we'll be back to the Swedish beers. So I hope you're enjoying this series of Nordic beers that I'm doing for you over December. Slàinte just now.